Hey everybody, Adam Davidson, RadCast for Thursday, February 9th, 2023. Thanks for joining me and making this a part of your day. I truly appreciate it, and I'm glad that we can do this together. This is 1 John chapter 5, verses 18 and following. Listen to these words. John packs a lot of truth into his concluding remarks at the end of this letter. So do your best to open up your ears and your heart and listen. Here we go. We know that anyone born of God does not continue to sin. The one who was born of God keeps them safe, and the evil one cannot harm them. We know that we are children of God, and that the whole world is under the control of the evil one. We know also that the Son of God has come and has given us understanding, so that we may know him who is true. And we are in him who is true by being in his Son, Jesus Christ. He is the true God and eternal life. Dear children, keep yourselves from idols. And that's the word of the Lord. I was drawn to this because I was working through something else, and I remembered how 1 John just sort of ended abruptly, like a PS. Hey, keep yourselves from idols. And I was like, that's very interesting. And so I was praying about that and studying it. And then I was working my way backwards in 1 John, and I got to verse 18, which is where we started. And you may have completely missed it, but this is what it says. We know that anyone born of God does not continue to sin. Now, I read that as a sinner, and I go, uh-oh, I continue to sin. What does that mean? And actually, John talks about that a fair amount. He says, you stopped sinning, obviously, so we don't need to talk about this. But it's like, but John, question, and maybe I'm taking a risk here, raising my hand during class, during your letter here, but I continue to sin, so what does that mean? I think that Christians deal with this and struggle with this quite a bit. They say, how could I possibly be a Christian if I continue to sin? And then the evil one will come along and whisper the same thing in your ear and cause you to question your very salvation. Dear friend, do not do this. I'm going to give you a great example of how, as followers of Jesus, this all works. First, here's the theological side. Our status as children of God leads to new behavior, not the other way around. And what I mean by that is we become children of God, and as we realize that this has happened in us, and as we become his son, his daughter, in that moment of salvation, and then over time in sanctification, our behavior changes. It's not the other way around. It's not like when somebody, if we were to adopt somebody, like I have adopted my son Cameron, it's not like I gave him a trial period to have him treat me like his dad and I like his son and see, like, I just adopted him. Like his status changed, right? So when we become followers of Jesus, we are adopted into his kingdom, our identity changes, and then as a result, our being changes. The way that we live changes. And now as followers of Jesus, we live into who we are. It's a process. So when John says we know that anyone born of God does not continue to sin, I go, wait a minute, I'm born of God and I continue to sin. That means that I've got a ways to go yet. I'm still growing. I'm still a work in progress. And now let me tell you why there's hope that you can actually change. I want you to think back to when you were a little kid. There's probably something that you did consistently that got you in trouble, and your parents said to you something like, young man or young lady, we don't do that. Big boys or big girls don't do that. So for example, let's say you picked your nose, just compulsively, could not stop picking your nose. And your mom or dad or grandma or grandpa, somebody said to you, hey, big boys don't pick their noses. Big boys use a tissue. Go get a tissue. And so you go, well, okay. And your parents maybe told you that 1, 2, or 1,019 times, especially after you started putting them on your bedroom walls. So at what point did you become a big boy or a big girl, right? Well, it was that you were on your way to that, and so your parents said to you, this is what big boys and big girls don't do. They do this instead. John is saying to us, hey, we are followers of Jesus. We're adopted. We're his children. His children don't continue to sin. But John, I do. He says, great, so what should you do? Stop sinning? John's like, bingo, it can be done. If you stopped picking your nose successfully, at least when you think other people are watching, you've come a long way, dear friend. And if that can change in you, imagine what God can do to change your heart and grow you up into being more like Jesus. That's RadCast.